there was one point where my bank account was overdrawn. I was in the bed, laid out. My kids came in to come and play with me, and I couldn't because I was in withdrawal from prescription opiates, and now I'm able to have these type of conversations. And that's, I'm about to shed a tear because it's a blessing to be able to have taken it to this extent in my recovery. But now we can use this public platform to have these conversations in public to let you know that you can make your own version of this. You can have your own conversations like this. You can have people in conversations and community that are aligned with like actively, intentionally creating the life that you desire. And it's not out of the cards for you. As a matter of fact, it is so in the cards for you.
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
Welcome to another episode of the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Liz McKean.
And I am Bryce the third. I like that. So there's a lot of discussion on the podcast app about like, what is the best way? Ever since we did that episode where we kind of like put it, we revealed what's going on behind the curtain and how we're trying to figure out how to introduce ourselves. There's been a lot of input like, well, maybe Liz should go first, or maybe like Bryce should say we are the host, or maybe, so we're just going to keep experimenting with it until we feel it is right.
I believe
just right.
And today's episode's intro is brought to you by our friend Marty. So thanks, Marty, the podcast group. He's the best.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So we did it. All right, cool.
What's up, Liz? How's your energy?
My energy is good. I'm feeling inspired. I've been feeling very inspired lately, which is exciting because I get inspired on and off, I think, all the time. But usually around the new year, because we're recording this, a couple weeks past, I feel really overwhelmed with the pressure of a new year. Therefore, I kind of like set that aside. I think we said that in a previous episode, that just like set that aside, plan to make, maybe intentions that are a little more official later in the year. And this year I felt like really excited about it. Like felt like the right time to maybe put some things down on paper, like things that I wanted to achieve, short-term, long-term, and just even in the day-to-day, like habits that I want to put into place. And it's been really fun, but it's been kind of evolving every year. And if it's not fun, I don't do it when it comes to this kind of stuff. So how about you? How you feeling?
My energy is pretty cool. I am showing up, allowing space for myself, compassion and understanding. I think that's big with me always. Mm-hmm. That's big in everything that I teach. That's big in everything that I show up in. But like, I think it's prioritization of that aspect of showing up will be big at the very least this quarter. Mm-hmm. Even today, like I was moving a little slow, and sometimes at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm moving a little fast. And I could do the thing where it's like, well, you're supposed to be asleep right now, or you're supposed to be up and functional right now. And it's just like, I'm just kind of learning to show up for like how it is that I'm naturally like pulled, and I judge the way that I show up as much. And because that's half the battle, judgment of how it is that I'm showing up. Like that's an extra layer that doesn't need to exist. Mm-hmm. And even that is judgment. So I don't know.
You're very judging.
But yeah, I'm feeling straight when it comes to like New Year's. I'm not like because like I have multiple seasons throughout a year. Mm-hmm. And it's not even like something like, okay, first quarter, Q1 is this season, Q2, it's like I kind of am naturally inclined, like, oh, like we're shifting into a new season. Mm-hmm. So last year I had the season of strategy. I had the 90-day Disciple of Self journey. There was a couple other seasons. And like sometimes I'll name them and sometimes I just feel them. Mm-hmm. But it's like my concentration will shift to like a specific concentration. And I think that works for me, especially in like New Year's. Historically, I would get emotional around New Year's. Even when I was like in active addiction, I think the emotion was there. but I think the emotion was always there. Like in recovery, it's allowed for me to investigate where that emotion comes from. And I think that emotion always came from like expectations.
Oh, yeah.
As well as like looking back at the year past and just judging, just comparison, like this is all I did, or not being able to remember what I did. Cause it's like, I'll go to list off what it is that I need to do in a day. And like, it never fails. I have to learn how to show up for myself. Like I'll go to write a to-do list. And as soon as I go to write a to-do list, everything that I thought to do, like I forget it, So I've had to like implement into my process, like, okay, when you think of it, like write it down or like say it on your phone or something like that. And then when you sit down, you can take all those times that you recorded saying it on your phone or writing down and put it in one cohesive list. But if it's like, I'm sitting down here on Sunday and I'm gonna write down all my to-do lists for the rest of the week, like I'll have nothing. So same thing when I'm sitting down at the final day of a year, looking back on the past 365, like, what did I do this year? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
What did I do? That's just not how my mind works.
Yeah.
So like last year, towards the end of the year, it was very important that like I continue to like meditate upon like, well, what were my accomplishments this year? And it was about, around like November is when I start like making a list of like, these have been my accomplishments this year as they popped up, which helped me to have something tangible to look at to like, oh, like I did do quite a bit. And there's a lot that I can jump off of moving forward.
Well, and you're a journaler, right? So do you look back in your journal to see like what, how you were, because even if you're not putting in the journal, like I did a good thing today, like my supervisor said I'm awesome or something like that, like more just like I feel this way today. And like I feel like you can kind of like the even the feeling train of a year can be really cool.
Yeah, my journals. So first of all, like when it comes to like identification, like I try not to identify with anything, because even when you say I'm a journaler and it's like, dang, this has been a season of like really not journaling, like I'm slipping, but it's like we are receptive to our seasons. But yes, I do. I have journaled quite a bit, and journaling is an important tool. And it's crazy you would ask that question. I hardly ever look at what I wrote until like the journal ends, and then I'll go back to the beginning of the journal to see like where I began that journal at and what season I was in. But for me, you can tell like just seasons, like there'll be a certain concentration that you can see like I'm always talking about this thing, or I'm wondering like how I'm going to get over this thing, or like how I'm going to solve this issue or this problem. Like you can tell like it's themes throughout these things. So that's always interesting to go look at. But just like, listening to podcast episodes and listening to like my music and listening to old stuff, I kind of like just try to keep it moving.
Are you able to know that you're in a season when you're in a season, like especially in a particularly hard one? I feel like for me, it can be when I'm in a hard season, it can feel like this just is life now and not like this is a season and it's going to pass just like they all do.
I think I'm always receptive to lessons, and I work to have that awareness of, and I got this book too I'm reading called Transcend by Scott Barry Kaufman about Abraham Maslow's work. And there's a terminology
Maslow's
for it,
hierarchy of needs. Is that the Maslow?
Yeah. But which, by the way, FYI, Maslow never invented a pyramid. Like it was never meant to be like you here and then you jump to here after you get that accomplished, and then you jump to here after you get that accomplished. That was created by not Maslow, but by like the time period in the, I don't know, it wasn't Maslow.
Okay, interesting.
Anyways,
good to know.
But there's a terminology in there for like the part of the brain that allows for us to continuously be excited in the midst of things being the same, like continuously seek potential in the midst of things being the same. And I've had some experience recently, like, you guys who listen to the show, you guys and gals, we've done calls to action to go on a podcast app and holler at us. And, after, you make so many calls to action, it's like, okay, it's just something you do. And recently we checked the podcast app and we went in there. It's like, oh, you all are actually engaging, But it's like after 30 years of going outside and looking up and the sky is blue on the first day of the 31st year, when you go outside, what do you expect? And it's hard to like our brains filter out the things that we don't need to worry about because our brain has so much to kind of concentrate on. So we can tend to like get rid of the things that don't like make sense to focus on a day. So I say all this to say, I have realized that things can shift. And, you know, to see the engagement in the podcast group, or to see like how people are showing up for programming here in Detroit after being here for 2 years and like really like, you know, being a little dog on the block. And, you know, we're calling people, you know, it's now, especially with this Motor City Recovery Night that we're doing in collaboration with the Pistons, people are calling us. You know, we go to programs that once used to have like 1 or 2 people at, and it's 11, 12 people there, you know, and it's continuously growing. And people are showing up saying that people beyond me and my partner here had invited them. You know what I'm saying? They didn't see a Facebook post that we created. Like they heard about us from this person in Ann Arbor who had the collegiate recovery program that sent them here. And it's like, oh, like the work that we've been doing, like we're hitting the tipping scale of where some of that work is starting to work for itself.
So that cup was filling up all this time. It was filling.
Yeah, but it could be so hard to feel the weight of the cup as it fill up, at least for me.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, we're hard. You're hard on yourself. You know that, you know, most of us are hard on ourselves, and it's like so valuable to be able to step back and look around and be like, oh, look what I did do. Like, look where look how far I did come. Like, look at this effort that I did put in. And then also to know that none of your worth is like associated with any of it. You know, that.
I mean, and with your words, you know, and then so trying to allow for those words to manifest and understanding, like, is a process. And it's crazy, like in the context of like us here talking as we are in this context, like recovery wise, like I used to not be able to pick up people that I told that I would pick up. You know what I'm saying? Like, can you get me at 3:00 from here? Cause I need you to do this. Can you get your son from here at school? And it's like, yeah, I got it. And, you know, come 3:30, I'm like, oh snap, you know, like I used to not even be able to be dependable. Like I used to not even be able to feed myself. Like there's certain things that it's like, it's promises that I've been delivered from showing up that it's like, yo, my life is a trillion times better, and I am a trillion times more capable, and I'm a trillion times more competent and effective than I once was. But it's so interesting how like my new normal has set in, and it's like, oh, but I could be so much better. And you know, I'm lacking in these areas, and I need to actualize in these areas. And it's like, I think gratitude is one of the biggest tools that has allowed for me to like really feel it. Because especially being driven, as a driven person, there's a lot of things that I'm going for. But it's crazy, like the more I sit back and the more I achieve and the more I accomplish, it's like, oh, everything that like I'm going for, the reason that I'm going for it, once I ask myself why, like the reason I'm going for it is I already have that. You know, why do I want to do that? To spend more time with my kids. Like to be able to like legit sit back and chill and enjoy my family.
Yeah,
it's
you're
like,
building
bro,
a house on that foundation.
You can literally do that right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, so it's like these things that I can do right now. It's like, oh, like maybe I don't have to go so crazy.
Like, let me write a resolution list that like, oh my gosh, I can't even think about how many times I've written down, drink more water, and on a Post-it and put it on my desk, and drink more water. And then I move on with my day. And have I poured myself a glass of water? No, but that would actually be the thing that would get me to drink more water. I did a couple cool exercises for this year, if I can talk about them a little bit, which were kind of fun.
No, you can't talk about them at all, Liz.
All right, well, we're just going to turn off Bryce's microphone, and we're just going to talk about this without him then.
Please, share.
Just kidding. One thing I did was a vision board, which I did one of them like years and years and years ago. And it was really just a big cork board that I put pictures on that made me feel good. Like, you know, things that just like made me feel like I would like more of this in my life. You know, I've never been the vision boarder or even the goal setter so much that is like, I want this specific thing, because I found that I don't want to speak for the person I might be when I get to that point. You know, I don't want to speak. I mean, I'm not a car person at all. Honestly, my husband will tell you, he'll point out cars that are driving by and I'll just like be like, oh, that's great. And then be looking, at the wrong car or a person or something like that. But I would never, if I was a car person, I wouldn't be like, I want this color, this model, this year, those kinds of things, because I just know that different versions of me will come to be, different versions of the cars will be available, different, and I think it's more important to me to be like, I want to feel this way, about the life that I'm living. I want to wake up, feel excited about this life that I'm so lucky to have. And I want to wake up, and the days that I don't feel excited, have the tools and the ability to look around and still feel grateful. And like just those things that just like make everyday life a place you want to be, instead of just like this elusive thing in the future. So when I was looking to do this vision board, it was interesting because it was like I did like a workshop online, because there was somebody who wrote a book that I liked who was doing this workshop, and they took us through a visualization, and it was very specific. It was very just like, visualize. Actually, this is where I got this, specifically like the car that you're driving, the home that you're walking into, the people that are there, like things like that, which is really cool, but also felt like, this is not what I want my vision board to be. I don't want to like put pictures of what I want this life that might be someday in front of me. Like I want to put, images, words that are just going to be kind of the way that I feel, that I cherish, that I, want to make sure that I continue to cherish and remember they're there. And also things that I want to conjure up a little more of, like if that is compassion, I know that I have it, like you said, but it's something that I know I also can sometimes forget is in there. And so like putting up things that conjure that feeling up, I know that there's beauty all around me in the world and the people and the nature, all those things. But sometimes I, maybe I'm not noticing and not appreciating it. And then a whole day can go by and I can be like, man, it is a crappy day outside and I got to work so hard. And oh my God. And to be able to even look up, and even if it's just a cork board, and be like, look at that pretty tree. That's right. There's beauty. Like just those little reminders that I am in this life that I'm so lucky to be in. And I think even when I made that first vision board very many years ago, a few years before sobriety stuck, there were a lot of really hard things. And I think I was putting a lot of things up on that board that I really wanted my life to look like, hoping that maybe I could get there without having to give up drinking. That's the one thing I didn't have on the vision board, is like, stop this one thing that's keeping you from all these wonderful things. But even then, when there was harder things, when there was something that was taking my joy and my, life and my relationships and everything away from me, there was still beauty that was worth looking at, worth remembering, and having that right in front of me. I don't know. It was just nice to have like a North Star.
Like all things, even specific to recovery, I think recovery has shown me how not black and white things are. I got a friend, and he's the best. He's a great guy. He could be super like, ugh, though. You know what I'm saying? Either you're empty or you're full of hope. And it's like, nah, bro. Like sometimes like I'm hopeful, but I feel like at the same time.
But also paying attention.
Yeah. And so there's been times where I've needed to have more focus on, okay, this is how I want to feel. I want to feel fulfilled. I want to feel peaceful. I want to be graceful. I want to be competent, and that can look however, and then there's been times where I've had to be super specific, like, okay, I need a career that allows me to express these pieces of me, because that's what allows me to be fulfilled. And I need to find somewhere that values these pieces of me in order to get closer to mutual benefit. And then there's been times where it's in the middle, where it's like, a little bit more malleable around the specificity of how I show up, but also like a little bit more receptive to like different feelings, because maybe I don't even know how I want to feel because I haven't experienced it yet. So I think the most important thing is the receptivity to our own process. And that's what recovery has allowed for me, like to be sensitive to this experience. you know, whereas beforehand, like I was outer focused looking at everybody else, and, you know, everybody else has the answer, and I'm just like super deficient, and I don't understand anything, and somebody else knows more than me always. And now it's like, okay, I can take it upon myself to learn more about myself. Like I could pick up books, I could look at YouTube, I can, you know, go and gain context, but there's also like this inner educational process going on where it's like, oh, like this feeling shows me that this needs to be paid attention to a little bit more in this season. Or like I feel like, you know, I need to give myself a little bit more grace. Because there's been times where I've needed to give myself grace, like today, like I'm moving slow like a grandpa. And it's like I didn't feel that thing that's like, oh, you need to move quicker. You know, it's like, okay, that's cool. This is how you are today. Show up for yourself. Yesterday, the sun was out. That's another thing too. Like these different variables of life. Like I've had 2 full days of shining sun within the past 2.5 weeks. And yesterday I felt a little bit more motivated and inspired. And when I look back in hindsight, it's like, oh, the sun was out. You know? So it's like learning to show up for ourselves and for however it is that we're showing up versus having this, like, I need to show up 5 years from now, or in this year, I'm super focused on manifesting my, you know, Mercedes-Benz GLE coupe, and it has to be the year 2020. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that is what causes for anxiety, where it's like, okay, maybe, or maybe I need that. I don't know. Just like paying attention to us and our specific process is something, is an ability that is allowed us now because we can feel these feelings that guide us.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think it's ever changing. Like that process is going to kind of unfold as we grow and as we are in those different seasons. And, you know, like last year at this time, I was just like, let me just keep my head up. You know, my every day was certainly not like, let me make a freaking vision board, you know? And this year that just seems really fun and exciting. And I also know that tomorrow maybe I won't, you know, feel like finishing it for another like month or something. And that's fine. I've also, you know, I wonder if like what if you do have that moment where you're like, I really want to manifest, really a car thing. I'm just going to stick with the car thing. Like a Mercedes Benz or whatever. It's like, you know, how can you bring that energy into your life today? Like, you know, what is it that you want to feel? And then how can you bring those feelings in today? You know, like how can you make today feel like that day? Not like I got a brand new thing, but like you know, how do you work backwards? Like what are like little habits that you could have? Like what kind of person is somebody that,
you can clean your freaking car. Like
there
if you want to, this was a season for me. I got really big into like Abraham Hicks, and it's like feeling as if it's already happened allows me to be the person that attracts it to happening. And, you know, it makes sense because being a person who is like, ooh, I need this for my life to be complete, like that energy, even if you want to like bring it down from like the metaphysical plane, like when my mind capacity is focused on this one thing that I don't have making me happy, like I'll miss all type of opportunities to potentially bring this thing into my life because I'm so focused on having this thing a specific way, like the way our minds work. I will focus on the wrong things. Where it's like somebody might say like, hey man, you want to, you know, I'm renting out my car for blah, 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 you know, and like, no, I'm focused. I got to make this happen. But the next sentence that he would have said was like, it's a Mercedes GLE. And it's like, ooh, that could have put me behind the wheel of this car that I said initially that I want to be behind the wheel of. Like, you never know how the universe is going to work to kind of help you bring your things to fruition.
Yeah.
But just like little things though, like what I look like having a messy Tesla, you know? So it's like, why is my Buick messy? It's like, oh, well, let me clean my Buick so that I'm in the habit of taking care of my stuff when I get the car that I want, right?
Yeah.
And the car that I have is the car that I appreciate. So I'm very grateful for that car because I can get back and forth with no like anxiety to where it is that I need to go. Just like I feel when I get that car. And also, like when I get new things, like I realize that after a while, like it's not a new thing anymore. So I won't be riding to the store in my Tesla. Like I'll just be riding to the store, you know? And so is it really the new thing, or do I want to feel the excitement of the novel experience? And if I want to feel the excitement of the novel experience, what novel experiences can I create right now in this moment with the resources that I have at my fingertips, you know, so I can have little jolts of that novelty that allows me to continue to be excited about life. And so these are all tricks that, and when you think about, like, I was working at a plant and I got sober at the plant, and by plant I mean like automotive factory, but not like the cool engineering. I'm in an engineering office, but like on the floor and like doing 600 cars a day. And so I got sober there, and before, when I was getting high, it was cool because everybody getting high too, and we just get in here, we knock it out, another day in paradise, and then go home, right? But once I got sober, it's like, what am I doing? So I knew this didn't align with what I wanted, but I never once asked myself, what do I want, right? So now this journey began to figure out what it is that I want. What I want is to not be here. So I could have tried to skip the line and like quit immediately and then just thug it out, go work at Myers or something like that until I can. But it's like, even if I work at Myers, it's not what I want to do. So I'm getting a good paycheck here. So it's like, I still got to feed my family. What can I do? How can I utilize the resources at my fingertips? What is this? A podcast? What is this about? Success Magazine was one of the first podcasts that I started listening to. And I started hearing like people talking about occupations where they were using their mind. I started hearing about mindsets and spirit sets that were not reflected by the people in my immediate vicinity. I had no friends like these people on this podcast. Started listening to audiobooks, you know, about how finding, you know, was Dan Miller's podcast and book, you know, 48 Days to the Work You Love. And I started like gaining these concepts, and I started gaining these new languages. And that was what I could do with the resources at my fingertips that allowed for me eventually to like be where I'm at now and be in occupations that align with who it is that I am. But I couldn't skip the line, and the occupation wouldn't have made me happy, especially if I didn't have that cultivation period of like just using what I had at my fingertips. Because now that's a huge skill for me in my positioning, and a big part of my comparative advantage is me being able to utilize the resources that are right here to make some of this change happen that we're looking to make in my position. You know, so.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it wasn't enough to know what you didn't want. You needed to figure out what you did want. And what you did want was more than just a different job. You knew that you were deserving of something more. And when I made a list of goals or desires or whatever, for this year, just like I said, I'm not telling anybody that you need to do any of these things, because again, I've been very anti-New Year for a long time, but this year just felt fun to me. So I wrote down a lot of things that I was, you know, kind of hoping to really call in this year. So one of them was I want to drink more water, you know, I want to get better sleep. I want to connect more intentionally with my husband. I want to, you know, cook more meals at home, things like that are just like, this is going to make the day, you know, days that I live in, to be enjoyable, and can put my head down in the bed at night and feel proud and happy and, loved, and, you know, by myself and by other people. And I kept going, and all of a sudden it was like this list of like 30 things. And I had this whole plan to do other stuff with each of them. And I'm like, well, now I'm overwhelmed. I don't think I bought enough magazines to make this vision board. And so I wrote this person that I like to follow on Instagram, and I've done some of her courses and stuff, and I really like her. She had this exercise where you write just like a journal entry from like your ideal day journal entry. So like if I, you know, all these things that I was excited about and wanted to bring into my life were, you know, part of my life, like what might that look like at the end of the day, you know? And so I wrote this journal entry of like, oh my gosh, it was such a great day. You know, I started out the day with this. I had yoga. I had a big glass of water when I woke up, like all these things. And as I wrote, I kind of forgot about the list and just wrote about, like, I just was like smiling the whole time about this like lovely day. And like you said, there were so many things in the day that I already had, that I already do. You know, maybe just noticing them more, maybe just, you know, taking a breath, maybe not picking up my phone and scrolling when I needed a break, but instead like picking up a book or calling my mom or going for a walk or something like that. And then at the end of it, I looked back at the list and I was like, man, there are a whole lot of things on this list that do sound lovely. And maybe like there's part of me who wants to be a person who wants those things, but I don't think I really do, because they have no place in this lovely day of mine, you know? And obviously every single day is different, but it just gave me some perspective of like, oh, you know what? If I don't if I don't journal, like that's okay. Cause that's just like, I look at all these wonderful things. And it was so nice to just be able to be like, oh, actually simple is really lovely. And there's so much beauty that can happen in the day to day, which is, I mean, that's my goal, is to just like, find joy in the day to day. And because those are the ingredients to a big, beautiful life. And that big, long list got a lot shorter and simpler and more true to who I really am and the life I want to live. And it was really fun. I smiled the whole time.
And I think that is like, that's it. Like, that's the ticket. Like the increased quality of life. Overall, like, I think that is a huge theme behind the tools that we learn to cultivate, is the increased quality of life. Like, how do we increase this stay on this rock that we call home? Like, how do we, for ourselves and for those around us, when the tools become so tooly that it's like I'm focused on the tools and my quality of life is decreasing because I got to do this and I got to do this. And I said I was going to do 5 push-ups. I was going to write 3 paragraphs in my journal, and I was going to drink 20 bottles of water. And it's like, yo, like,
well, now you spent your whole day in the bathroom, but that's cool.
Right. So, and by the way, you've mentioned water so much on this episode. Like, I'm thirsty.
I'm so thirsty. I know.
I'm curious to you all who are listening. Hop in the podcast group on the Phoenix app and tell us a little bit. What are your relationships with New Year's resolutions, with goal setting, in recovery, but just in general, but I'm super curious, like, in the context of recovery, like, how do these things work for you? What do they look like in your life? What do you prioritize? What are important to you all? And like share some of those things, because I'm sure we could all use the resources and be able to knowledge share with each other and piggyback off of what other people are using. I know there's things that Liz has shared that, I will probably pick up. I haven't done any vision boarding per se, but there's a way that I'm going to implement it that I don't really want to talk about out loud, but I'm stealing it from you, Liz. So it's okay. Like, if you take information from each other, tools from each other, you're not stealing it. You're actually using each other. You're using community. And that's a big part of what the Phoenix is. That's a big part of what recovery is. That's a big part of what getting outside of ourselves is. So go in a group and go on the app and go in a group and share, like, what is your relationship to some of these things, especially around the new year?
Yeah. And I guess I just want to also acknowledge that I know that there's that we're a community of people who are at all different stages of recovery. Some not identifying in recovery at all, and wherever you're at there, we're so grateful that you're here. And there were a lot of days and years, and that the only thing was just putting one foot in front of the other. Like, for those days that are just like, I just need to not pick up today. I just need to save my life one more day. Like, that is like, you're in just the most that precious time that you're gifting yourself back. And the showing up looks different for every single person, and we need it all. And if all of this feels incredibly overwhelming, like, been there, it might feel that way for me next week, and that's okay. And every single breath you take is a new beginning. It does not have to be anything on the calendar. It doesn't have to be any podcast trying to tell you what to do, or take the tools that feel good in the moment and set the rest aside, and you.
I think too, what Liz said is very important. Like, it might be rough on me or different for me next week. And I was having a conversation with somebody last night where, I sent the voice note and I listened back to it, and it's like, oh, I can talk from a perspective sometimes of like, I'm not of it,
Yeah.
But I have very tough days. Like, these days, like in recovery, I have some of the toughest days. Like, I think I've had tougher days than I did when I was in active addiction. The difference now is that I'm able to use those days towards cultivating wisdom. I can investigate like what's really going on and make like real real shifts and real change. But it's continuously tough, but in some of the most rewarding ways, right? There's lows and there's highs. I think the ability to show up for life on life's terms is very important. And if even with that being said, and what Liz had just said being said, you still feel overwhelmed, I think this conversation is important, because just like I was in that plant listening to Success Magazine and podcast, I'm like, oh, they're speaking this language, and I want to be able to relate to them. I want to live that life. They're speaking a way that I haven't experienced, but I want to get there. Like, this is a show that comes from where you're at. There was one point where my bank account was overdrawn. I was in the bed, laid out. My kids came in to come and play with me, and I couldn't because I was in withdrawal from prescription opiates. And now I'm able to have these type of conversations. And that's, I'm about to shed a tear, because it's a blessing to be able to have taken it to this extent in my recovery. But now we can use this public platform to have these conversations in public to let you know that you can make your own version of this. You can have your own conversations like this. You can have people in conversations and community that are aligned with, like, actively, intentionally creating the life that you desire. And it's not out of the cards for you. As a matter of fact, it is so in the cards for you. So don't, what they say, don't compare, relate. So I hope that you're able to hear this conversation. And at the very least, if you're still going through it or questioning, if you want to live a different way, or, feel that it's hard to relate, at the very least, know that we've had similar experiences and you can have this conversation as well.
Yeah. We're really glad that you're here. And we are, I think, saying the things that we need to hear too.
Yeah. So we don't want to hold you all too long. We know how it gets when we get past a certain point of the timestamp on a podcast. So we're going to go ahead and let you go. We thank you all for kicking it with us today. This magnificent episode that Leah started out. And she's going to end too, because I didn't practice ending it.
Oh boy, pressure's on. So thank you so much for joining us. This was a fun episode. I love the ones where we can just kind of chit chat to each other. We had fun. I hope you did too. Please be sure that you subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd be so kind to leave a rating, a review, those are really helpful within the different podcast apps for people to find us. And how else can they find us, Bryce?
Oh, they could find us standing on rolling hills of green, sniffing daisies, and appreciating our lives. No, but also you can pop into the Phoenix app. Go to the App Store or the Google Play Store, download the Phoenix app if you haven't already, and join the podcast group. There's different groups within the Phoenix app, and the podcast has its own group, the Rise, Recover, Live podcast group. Pop in there, come talk to me and Liz. I want to know two things from you all. One, I want to know, what is your relationship with New Year's resolutions and goal setting, right? Two, to prepare us for a upcoming future taping that we're going to do, I want to know, with me and Liz's story, what are some specific things that you want us to touch on if me and Liz were to share our recovery journey? If we were to share our recovery story, what are some specific things about our stories that you would really want to know? Because I want to make sure we maximize this opportunity that's coming up. So those two things, hop in the podcast group and talk to us.
Awesome. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Catch you later.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you, or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.